All right. I think that's shared right now.
Yep, that's right. Thank you.
All right. So Dave did a good job of introducing me. I've been doing this for almost about 20 years now, the forensic agrology, and I teach the forensic agrology course with John Spencer, where I'm the agronomic type person. He is the document type person. So, what is a forensic agrologist? We play a critical role in providing independent analysis for disputes, insurance claims, and legal matters. And how forensic agrology is applied to a crop loss, pesticide damage, soil water issues, water drainage issues, livestock grazing concerns, and property and productivity assessments. And we're a neutral third party witness. So a court's going to use us to come in and give an independent assessment of stuff. We collect evidence. We send that evidence away and have it maintain a chain of custody and potentially be an expert witness in court. Now, in 20 years, I think I've only been in court 4 times as an expert witness, and I've been in front of the Ag Operation Review Board hearing a couple of times as well, which is something since COVID has become more important to the court process. So we get, various insurance companies will contact me, farmers will contact me, lawyers will contact me to come out and do a neutral assessment. And you want to provide your curriculum vitae or CV versus a resume for those court type proceedings or potential court proceedings. A lot of times stuff can be resolved before going in there. I think I've done 400 or 500 different cases over that 20 years. And like I said, only 4 of them ended up in court. So a CV is a little different than a resume. Resume is trying to promote and sell yourself. A CV just lists stuff that's relevant to what you're doing. So it's a little different take. To become a forensic agrologist, you got to have 10 years experience in the field, and you've got to take on the forensic agrology courses. Now, this isn't just limited to Saskatchewan. People from Alberta and Manitoba and even further away, British Columbia and stuff take our forensic agrology courses. It is something that seems to be rising in demand, especially as people find out what we do. And when lawyers find out about different things, they keep expanding. The admission committee, you send in your request. Once you've taken your courses, they look at your experience and they will approve you as a forensic agrologist or not, depending on what you've done. I like this little quote from Albert Einstein: education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And a lot of times I get thrown into situations where you really don't know what you're getting into before you get into the field. People think about things in different ways, but you never know till you get there. And knowing your area of expertise, know your limits. Vern Rax, wonderful agrologist from the university, used to do a lot of animal claims, and he's passed away. And there isn't too many people doing those animal type claims. So a lot of times I will go out and do an animal claim, but I can write the reports, but I don't talk the talk and I don't walk the walk on the animal thing. So I usually bring along another expert with myself to do that. They may not be comfortable writing reports, but they're more than willing to come out and help with the investigation. So knowing your limitations, that's one of the first things that a lawyer or a judge is going to want to know, that if you're outside your area of expertise, you need to say that. I'm licensed in Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. It seems to be people calling me from further and further away all the time. And a lot of times it's referrals. So one lawyer sees your work somewhere, or they didn't even know forensic agrology existed, and they're quite happy to get you use their services for different things. And the best compliment I ever get is, I went out and did a claim, say 10 years ago somewhere, and maybe I was on the other side of that claim even, and whoever was involved with it, the producer, whatever, and they give me a call up and say, hey, George, you were out here for this. You were on the other side, but you were fair. And I think that's about the best compliment you can get in such a thing, is that you were fair. So you're being that neutral, unbiased, there's, you're not an advocate. And one of those things that you want to avoid is your confirmation bias. And I just pulled this from Wikipedia. And a lot of times, when you go out to a field, a farmer will tell you it's spray drift or it's cattle damage. And some of those things may be more obvious, but sometimes not. I had one fellow phone me up. He says, George, I got hit on the one side of my field with spray drift. He says, and then while he phoned me back about 10 minutes later when he was on the other side, he says, I got hit on the other side as well. And then 10 minutes later, he's like, wait a minute, I went and checked the weather. It froze 4 days ago. He says, it's not spray drift at all. The entire field is damaged with frost. So you have to be a little careful about, most of the time farmers are pretty good at knowing what they're dealing with, but sometimes that's more difficult as well. And I have an example later on I'm going to show you. So you gotta, you're still a neutral third party. So, and you're not an expert till you're 50 kilometers away from home, or at least until you've been doing this for a long time, because people do use me around home now because they know what I do. But off the start, they're worried about you being biased one way or another for one side or the other. So you have to be a little careful of that as well. So, collect the information, see what it is, figure out what else it could be, eliminate those things. And this is definitely a Sherlock Holmes type thing, is eliminate all the things you can, and what's left is likely the truth. But sometimes, most of the time you can figure out what's going on, but sometimes you can't. It's a biological system. And the worst thing that happens is I get a call from an insurance company and the field's been harvested. And they want me to come out and have a look at it and try to figure out what's going on. And that's really difficult. And nobody took pictures, even though everybody's got a camera on their hip now. Nobody took any pictures or anything else. And a lot of times, I have my forensic agrology booklet that I send out to people to collect information in, but it's just simple things like taking a picture is included in there with a measuring stick or some form of measuring. Your foot in the picture even will give you a size of things, loonies, toonies, tape measures, different things like that help dramatically. So this is one of these things that people always ask me for. And if someone does want this, they can get this from me. It's just a forensic agrology checklist. And it's not complete, and it gets tweaked all the time as you think about different things or you run into other things. But this is just some of those questions to ask. This is just a quick 2-page little checklist to go through. Some of it includes herbicide efficacy, epinacea from group 4 damage, different things like that, witch's broom from group 9, that you might see in the field, and it's a quick and easy check mark, and it makes it more thorough and more complete. When you're starting off, you're worried about missing things, and a lot of stuff, well, the seeding date, well, you can get that later because that's written down somewhere. The spray date is likely written down, and some of the record keeping is absolutely wonderful now. When I started 20 years ago, it was still the calendar in the kitchen, so they pull off the calendar off the wall and see what day they sprayed or what day they seeded and what they were doing and that type of stuff. So a lot of this information is a lot better. The weather, lots of people have weather stations on the farm now. That really helps. And it's amazing, the weather stations are something that's very critical and something I look at all the time. So what do I do? Drones, especially for cattle damage. When I first started this, I used to fly up in little planes, and my stomach does not like little planes. My brain loves it, my stomach does not. So drones are a little more better that way. This one here is group 4 damage into a canola field from the edge. and usually you can see this fingering pattern, and some's hit worse than others, which is pretty standard. Um, and you'll see a shadow behind those trees further down, so it gives you a direction. So there's a number of different things that we do. Group 2 and group 4 damage in peas is what this is. But you're always looking for, if someone doesn't know what a pea should look like, it's green, kind of green. The judge isn't going to see much difference there. So you need to have some sort of comparison. So this one here is group 4 damage in canola with a twisting or epinacea on the canola plant. And this came in later. Sometimes like group 4s, they're going to damage the seed pods before the seed pods are even out, and they'll abort. So you get a bunch of different types of damage. This is group 9 damage in wheat. This is Roundup drifted into the wheat crop. And you can see that there was some sort of wave there or wind or something or other that interrupted that flow. Could have been that fence post even. So, those shadows, those different things. The bad part when I started this 20 years ago, there was always misses. So if you had a herbicide mishap, like a group 2 spraying contamination, you used to get those little pieces there where there's a miss. You're going, okay, well, that's where the sprayer didn't go. Well, now those don't exist. Everybody hits the field really, really well. And so it's more tough to find things, especially with the entire field is 100% coverage. Is this frost? Is what are those things? And taking the courses kind of help you out with that. This here is group 2 contamination on Liberty Link canola. And it's from this year. It's not taken up from the roots because of the white speckling on the leaves. That happened this year. If you have group 2 damage into canola that's carryover, it looks different. So some of those things happen. Here, this is that group 2 damage in canola where it's causing the loss of apical dominance. So where the group 2 came in, it killed the center growing point, and then it grew around it. So the entire field where this group 2 was, it was actually group 2, not tank damage, but from the year before, application of group 2. So there was a line in the field where the field hadn't been sprayed the year before, and it didn't match. It matched to a seeding pattern. So the group 2 damage was, and then it grew around, but it was about a foot shorter than the undamaged side. And there was about a 6 bushel loss per acre. So across, there was 800 acres of canola. So it's a pretty substantial loss. I was trying to find a good picture of witch's broom. I have a couple of pictures later on, but there was a study out of, I think this was North Dakota, and witch's broom kind of looks like a witch's broom in the plants. You'll see it in the leaves next. But this is what, you cannot detect this in parts per billion in the plant that will cause this in potatoes. So potatoes is one of those things where you cannot have any glyphosate drift into that field, especially for seed potatoes, because instead of one sprout, it has 20. And it's below the detection limit. And it's in parts per trillion where this happens at. So parts per billion. Normally I can test stuff down to about 2 parts per billion. This is well below that level, causing this type of damage. Now it does grow out of it. If you do get a plant off this, it'll be fine the year after. But here is witch's broom in trees. So because I have my horticulture background, I get a lot of calls in the yards. And this is pretty typical of the type of damage you see from glyphosate into a yard. So it loses that loss of apical dominance, and instead of sending out 1 leaf, it sends out 20. And really weird, funky leaves. This is group 9 damage. So the one side on the left is the side that got hit. And on the right-hand side, I just walked over to the other side. The other side looks pretty good. There was hardly any damage to it, but half the tree is damaged on the other side, which isn't such a good thing, and that's going to create problems later on. This is group 9 versus group 2 damage in a field. And this field on the left looks very similar to the field on the right, group 2. When I got out in the field, they already said that there was 10 agrologists that had looked at this field and already confirmed it was group 2 damage, but it's not, because the plants died the wrong way. And within a minute, I knew that, and the farmer didn't even believe me, so I had to send away samples, which I normally wouldn't have, the field, but it came back positive for Roundup. The hired man got the wrong tote mixed up, killed 80 acres of canola with Roundup instead of putting on Liberty. They looked at the totes on the thing, they were refilled totes, nobody had labeled them. And everybody was just supposed to know in the front, ones at the front were glyphosate and the ones at the back were glufosinate. So those type of things, there was a new procedure with a Jiffy pen that fixed all that. This is just group 2 tank contamination on the right. So it can be pretty severe. Sometimes it's very, very, very unnoticeable, but this one was pretty noticeable. So group 9 on the left here, the whole plant is dying, versus on the group 2, which is causing that loss of apical dominance. So it's the growing tips that usually have the damage here on the group 2. So that's a quick definition of that. So especially if the plants are larger. When they're small, it's hard to tell. But you do usually have a number of visual clues. And you go, okay, it could be group 9 or group 2. Let's look deeper into that. And the group 2s, if you send that plant away for group 2 testing, it will not come back positive for group 2s. And I get kind of annoyed when people do that, because it's way below the detection limit that causes that damage. The plant is being damaged by something that you're applying at 6 grams per acre, and tank contamination, that's a 20th of that, so 0.3 grams per acre. It's below the detection limit, so you never get a positive test for a group 2. So it's not even worthwhile sending it away generally, because it'll always come back that there's no group 2, but there is. It's just the damage from that little amount of group 2 doesn't take much. And the carryover, I've seen carryover in group 2 3-4 years later pretty easy. So this is what I call my $1 million picture. So if you're going in front of a judge and you need to show a comparison, the one on the left is undamaged. The one on the right is damaged. The one down in the middle is really damaged. And it was actually in a low spot, so it was drowned out, the peas there. So, the low spot's not a fair assessment, but the one on the right probably is. And that was group 2 and group 4 under those peas. But when you look at the ones on the right, or a judge looks at the one on the right, they're going to go, well, plant's alive. Yeah, but it should be 18 inches tall versus the 9 inches that it is in that picture. And when you take the forensic agrology course, the investigative side, you get one of these charts that comes with it as well, which is very handy. I carry 2 or 3 with them because they do blow away. They kind of get caught in the wind and stuff. But it's very handy. They're in a grid square for inch by inch, and you can give pretty good things. So you'll see in a lot of the pictures, you'll see my hand or my foot or whatever for different references, so you have an idea of size. Just a picture of a crop doesn't tell you a whole lot. Sometimes you need to have a comparison. This one here is drone images of cattle damage. This one, even though this looks really, really bad, it's only about 10% damage. And a lot of damage is 5% or less. So people get, it looks really nasty. And here's another picture here. And the trail that looks really strong on the left-hand side there, it's likely deer or elk that are doing that. So I can't tell from this in the air. I get good pictures from the air, but I need to go in and actually look for feces on the ground to what species been using that trail. Cow pies are pretty easy. Bison, they're pretty easy. They make a cow pie. But other animals, they make different shapes and sizes. So, like I said, and there is some companies out there that are doing some AI work, and crop insurance is doing this as well with AI, is they fly their drones and it'll tell them how much damage that field has. Now, sometimes you don't get the browsing where they've eaten pieces. Canola at a certain time of year is very tasty, so they will chew further. So they'll walk but they'll reach out. And same thing with young barley heads, they'll just chop those off, right? And same thing oats. So those type of things can, you do have to take that into account. So you can't just account on the 18-inch wide trail that they've made in the field. So it can be a little further. And one of the other things that I do is backcasting. And I'm not sure if you guys would be familiar with the terms or not, but it's basically figuring out what was put on by fertilizer inputs and what was taken off by harvest. And I had a very unique case many years ago, and they were fighting in court for a long time. And then I went out, and these guys had a field of peas, and they had damage. The peas were yellowed by the Odyssey that was sprayed on it, and they were in a dispute with the company that caused their yield loss because they only got about 18 bushels an acre off those peas. So we did a little bit more digging. Well, about 3 years before, they kind of ran out of money, so they didn't go organic. They just stopped putting on fertilizer. So the first year after they stopped putting on fertilizer, I think they had a 50 bushel crop of wheat, and then they had a 32 bushel crop of canola, and then the peas were next. And I had got soil test reports from that RM, so I had a kind of a baseline from that 3 years before of what there would be in the soil normally. And then we started taking out the harvest with no inputs. And when we backcast that, it came out that those peas should have yielded about 18.5 bushels. We were within about 0.2 bushels of where that was. Basically, they ran out of phosphate, and that was the most yield they were going to get until they mineralized more phosphate into the field. So those type of things do come into play a lot, especially in court cases and stuff that's happened a long time ago. So it's one of those services that, if you're just taking off stuff, you're not putting in the fertilizer to replace it, you're mining the field, and that's about as simple as it can get. A lot of times we're using GPS images of satellite shots. Google Earth Pro I use a lot. We use GPS to drive around or walk around the damaged area, and then figuring out the wind direction. And it's amazing when the left-hand side here, the shadow behind those trees matches the wind direction almost perfectly. So, it's not just one thing. It's that the wind was going in the right direction, but that shadow is really nice. And I remember having a bunch of trees down. They had put spruce trees, and they were about 20 feet tall, but they were about 50 feet apart. And behind every spruce tree, there was a shadow that pointed exactly back to the wind direction that day. So the crop was protected behind there. Sometimes the trees actually will hold the air back there and create a vortex and cause problems as well. So there are other forensic agrologists out there, and some of them are animals, some of them are documentation type people, some of them are environmental people. We're looking for animals people all the time. Vets don't have time to go out and do investigations, but they will help with necrosis testing, feed issues testing, different things like that. And the document type people, John does this type of work, and Glenn Hill, and they try to figure out what the fair costs and income and going back 20 years and who brought what tractor in, usually with divorces or farm splits. It's amazing stuff. The environmental stuff is actually more like the agronomy stuff. So there's a bunch of courses. We have the Fundamentals of Investigation. This is a half-day course. A lot of times people that take this say everybody should take this because it really helps out. And we don't give you a lot of details in this one, but we give you ideas. Report writing case. That's the second workshop. This is a 6-hour one, and we go through how to write a report up. And it becomes part of what's going to hold up in court as an expert witness. So this can help you out as well anytime in your career. Next one is defending your work, handling criticism, being an expert witness. And we just developed this, and it seems to have been well received. And everything ends up going back towards being an expert witness. But the first time someone criticizes your work, And if you haven't done a real good job, it's a little hard on your ego. And then the next one up is being an expert witness, and that's coming soon. And we don't have that one complete yet, but hopefully this summer we will finish that and offer it this fall. And there's also going to be a summer networking and update component. And this is going to give you a lot of little details on how to do different things, how to use Copernicus browser for satellite data, and how to make that work with Google Earth Pro, and how to, fly a drone or use the drone type stuff. So this is going to be a lot of little things, and maybe some hands-on drone stuff as well. We haven't quite got this all done, and this might be available this summer. So I guess I don't know if we have any time for questions and answers, but if we do, and this is my contact information, if anybody's ever wants to get a hold of me, they're more than welcome to.
Yeah, we've actually got 10, 15 minutes for question and answer, George. I'd like to thank you for the presentation. I got a technical issue here. I can't bring up the Q&A, so Lori Hayes is going to join us, and she's going to deal with the stuff that comes in. I've got a couple questions for you that I'd like to ask.
Sure.
Just for people, I took the training for the forensic agrologist, and I've never done a court case, never done an investigation per se. But what I can say with your coursework, George, is has been very helpful for me working as an agronomist. I can go out in field and look at things, and it allows me to do a better assessment, and it also allows me to head into discussions as to why you don't really want to go to court.
Yeah.
Never any fun in that, and it's been very helpful to inform me as to all the steps involved and all the reasons why you might not want to go. And so with my clientele, I've found your coursework very, very helpful. So I do appreciate it. One of the questions that I've got is, the forensic agrology side of it deals very well with the process that you go through to present the material. But when you look at all the pictures and when you look at the comments or listen to the comments that you make about the what you see out there, there's other training that needs to be done. And like with me, and I think with you too, most of that came through experience out in the field. But have you got any suggestions for training to help people learn, what the chemical damage looks like? Who are the people that you talk to get the information that you need to